What if I told you that the most common compliment you give might actually be insulting the people you work with?
Oh, yeah. It happens all the time.
Right. Like, think about it for a second. Someone on your team spends maybe 3 weeks agonizing over a project. They present it to you, their nerves are just completely fried, they finally hit the finish line, and you look at them and say, well, hey, that was good.
Just good.
Yeah, just good. And you think
Yeah.
you're being supportive, right?
Yeah.
But today on the deep dive, we're going to look at why that specific four-letter word is often the linguistic equivalent of a dial tone.
A dial tone. I love that.
Thanks. So our mission today is to unpack a really fascinating piece of text we've been looking at. It's called C2 English, when good is no longer enough. And it centers around a scenario involving a student named Emily, a classroom presentation, and honestly, the brutal limitations of basic English.
It really is a scenario that perfectly isolates this universal communication failure we all engage in. I mean, we tend to treat praise as this binary system, like it's either a pass or a fail.
Right. It's terrible or it's good.
Exactly. If something isn't an outright disaster, it just gets tossed into the good bucket. But that default reflex fundamentally breaks down when you analyze the sheer asymmetry of effort between, well, the person doing the work and the person evaluating it.
And that asymmetry is exactly where Emily's story starts in our source material.
Oh.
So she finishes this presentation. And let's be real about what public speaking actually entails. It is inherently vulnerable.
Oh, incredibly vulnerable. It's terrifying for most people.
Yeah. You are standing up, you're physically separated from the tribe, putting your intellect on display.
Okay.
But she gets through it. Her classmates clap, her teacher smiles. And that initial nonverbal feedback loop is entirely appropriate for the level of effort she just expended.
Yeah, the applause signals social recognition, and the teacher's smile signals authoritative validation. The environment recognizes that a real metabolic and intellectual cost was just paid.
Right.
The room's energy shifts to acknowledge that, but then the verbal feedback arrives.
The dreaded verbal feedback.
Yeah. A classmate leans over and simply says, "It was good."
Just flat out, it was good. And Emily, playing her part in the social contract, she politely says, thank you. But I want to pause right here.
Mm-hmm.
Why do we do this? Like, is it just malice or apathy? Because honestly, handing out the word good after someone bleeds over a presentation feels like, well, it's like giving a generic prepaid $20 Visa gift card to a friend when you know exactly what their favorite, highly specific hobby is.
Oh, that's a great way to put it.
Right. Like, technically you gave them something of value, but the severe lack of observation just makes it feel incredibly hollow.
It feels hollow because it is hollow. I mean, to understand the mechanism here, we have to look at cognitive load and how the brain allocates its resources. The human brain is basically a cognitive miser.
A miser. So it's cheap.
Exactly. It desperately wants to conserve energy. When you're sitting there listening to a presentation, your brain is processing complex information, visual stimuli, the social dynamics of the room. It's a lot.
It's a heavy lift.
Right. So when it's time to offer feedback, synthesizing all of that data into a precise, targeted compliment requires what psychologists call system 2 thinking. It's deliberate, it's effortful, and it literally burns glucose.
So saying it was good is just our brain entirely bypassing system 2 and defaulting to system 1, like the automatic zero effort reflex.
Precisely. Good is just a conversational placeholder. It requires zero processing power. It's the brain's default mechanism for navigating a social obligation without expending the mental calories required to actually analyze why the presentation was effective.
Wow.
Yeah, the classmate didn't have to evaluate Emily's research or her delivery or her slide deck. He just hit the automatic reply button.
Okay, but let me push back on this for a second, because I can hear you thinking this out there. Isn't demanding more than that just a form of linguistic elitism?
How do you mean?
Well, I mean, people are exhausted.
Yeah.
We're talking about a classroom or maybe a boardroom at like 4 p.m. on a Friday. Are we really expecting a tired peer to suddenly sound like a Pulitzer-winning theater critic just to be polite? It seems like an incredibly high bar for casual human interaction.
I get that. I really do. It's an important distinction to make. But this isn't about demanding poetry or enforcing elitism. It's about the sociological impact of active disengagement.
Active disengagement. Okay, unpack that.
Well, when we excuse that behavior as mere fatigue, we ignore the power dynamic it creates. By defaulting to good, The classmate effectively erased Emily's specific labor. He didn't evaluate her, he just processed her.
Processed her. Ouch.
Right. And that lack of precision, when it's multiplied over a lifetime of interactions, it creates a culture where excellence is just routinely met with indifference. It's not about using a thesaurus to sound smart, you know?
Right.
It's about the fundamental respect of actually observing someone's effort.
You're right. There's a profound difference between being tired and being entirely unobservant. And this is exactly where Emily's teacher steps in. She refuses to let that passive disengagement slide.
Yeah, she intervenes right away.
She does. She looks at the class and she says something very specific. She says, your presentation deserves a stronger word. She doesn't say a fancier word or a more grammatically correct word. She says a stronger word.
And that phrasing reveals the underlying physics of language. I mean, we often treat vocabulary as decorative, you know, like choosing paint colors for a house.
So it's like just making it look pretty.
Exactly. But the teacher is framing language as load-bearing architecture. Words have structural integrity. They possess tensile strength.
I absolutely love that framing. Load-bearing capacity.
Yeah.
So if Emily poured high-level research, intricate data analysis, and raw performative vulnerability into this presentation, that work possesses immense conceptual weight.
Exactly. It's heavy. And the word good is made of linguistic balsa wood.
Balsa wood. It just snapped.
It literally cannot support the structural reality of Emily's effort. If you try to place the weight of a masterful presentation onto a flimsy word like good, the word collapses. It fails to convey the reality of what just occurred in that room.
So the teacher realizes that her students are trying to build skyscrapers with plastic toy hammers.
Right.
And she steps in to provide the industrial-grade materials. Which brings up a really fascinating philosophical dilemma for me. The lesson here pivots on this explicit idea from the text, that if every great thing is just categorized as good, your English stays basic.
Yes.
But it's not just your vocabulary that stays basic, right? It's your actual perception. If we don't possess the linguistic buckets to sort out the nuances of excellence, do we eventually lose the ability to even notice that excellence exists?
Oh, you are hitting on the core of linguistic relativity here. It's often referred to as the Sapir-Whorf hypothesis.
Right. The idea that language shapes thought.
Exactly. The foundational idea is that the language you use doesn't just reflect your thoughts, it actively shapes and constrains your cognitive reality. Your brain categorizes the world based on the labels it has available.
Okay.
So if your entire evaluative spectrum consists of bad, okay, and good, your brain will literally force every experience into one of those three narrow boxes.
So you basically become blind to the spectrum. You see a meticulously plotted data analysis and like a mildly amusing cat video, and your brain just files them both under good. You lose the resolution completely.
That is the tragedy of a limited lexicon.
The bluntness of your vocabulary actively blunts your cognitive experience of the world.
Yes. If the classmate had been forced to find an accurate word, his brain would have had to undergo a diagnostic process. He would have had to ask himself, what specific mechanism made this presentation work?
But by skipping that step, he just cheated everyone.
Exactly. He didn't just shortchange Emily. He robbed himself of the opportunity to critically engage with his environment. He remained a passive consumer of reality rather than an active participant.
And to fix that, to break them out of this passive consumption, the teacher turns to the board, and she introduces 5 distinct axes of excellence. She gives them the advanced C2 level tools.
The industrial materials.
Exactly. But instead of just listing these like a dictionary, let's explore how these words fundamentally alter the power dynamics of a conversation. Let's look at the first axis she introduces, which is the concept of craftsmanship.
So the teacher writes the word excellent, and she ties it specifically to the idea of outstanding quality. This is a crucial starting point because it completely removes subjective emotion from the equation.
Interesting. No emotion at all.
Right. When you evaluate something as excellent, you are operating as an inspector. You are looking at the intrinsic value of the materials and the construction.
So it's a completely objective metric. Like imagine we are in a corporate boardroom. An analyst presents a financial model. If the CEO calls it excellent, they aren't talking about how the presentation made them feel warmly inside.
No, not at all.
They are signaling that the math is bulletproof, the formatting is flawless, the underlying architecture of the work has been built to the highest possible standard of the craft.
Exactly. It focuses entirely on the product itself. the craftsmanship. But what happens when the product isn't just well made, but actually disrupts the expected environment?
Ah, okay.
That requires a different linguistic tool entirely, which leads into the second concept the teacher introduces.
Right, the statistical axis. She writes the word exceptional on the board, defining it as something far above average. And this is such a radically different lens than excellent, isn't it?
It really is, because exceptional is inherently comparative. It requires environmental awareness.
Environmental awareness.
Yeah, you cannot use this word unless you first understand the baseline. It demands that the speaker acknowledge the existence of a bell curve.
Oh, wow. So to call Emily's presentation exceptional, you were basically communicating two things at once. You were saying, I know what a normal presentation looks like. I have seen the median performance, and you, Emily, have broken completely past that standard.
Right, it's an acknowledgement of an outlier.
And sociologically, that is a highly sophisticated form of praise, because it tells the recipient that you actually understand the context of their struggle.
Exactly. If a manager tells an employee their sales quarter was exceptional, it carries vastly more weight than good.
Because it proves the manager was paying attention.
Right. It proves they actually monitor the baseline of the entire department. It validates the employee's effort against the backdrop of their peers.
That makes total sense. You are praising them for defying gravity, but both excellent and exceptional are still relatively analytical. They feel very left brain. What if the success of the presentation has nothing to do with the data and everything to do with how the room reacts to it?
Then you need to shift to the axis of social gravity. And the teacher introduces this with the word remarkable, defined strictly as something worthy of attention.
I find this one so fascinating because it shifts the spotlight entirely. It's no longer about the slides or the bell curve. It's about the viral nature of the work.
The viral nature, exactly.
If a presentation is remarkable, it creates a social ripple effect. It literally compels the audience to make a remark about it.
It acts as a disruption to the status quo. If Emily's presentation was remarkable, it possessed a magnetic pull that broke through the audience's default apathy.
It forces engagement.
Yes. In a professional setting, a remarkable pitch is the one that people are still debating in the hallway 20 minutes after the meeting ended. The metric for success here isn't necessarily accuracy, it's the sheer inability to ignore the work.
It demands that you talk about it. Okay, so we have craftsmanship, statistical superiority, and social virality. But there is a fourth axis the teacher writes on the board, and this one feels much more intimate to me. It's the axis of the emotional footprint. She introduces the word impressive, defining it as something that leaves a strong positive impact.
The psychology of this word is particularly potent. If remarkable is about the external noise a piece of work generates, impressive is about the internal silence it leaves behind in the listener.
The internal silence.
Right. It relies on affective empathy.
Affective empathy. Can you break that down for us?
Sure. It basically means the work has physically or emotionally acted upon you. When you tell someone their work was impressive, you are centering your own altered state. You are admitting your intellect, your narrative, your effort. It has pressed into my consciousness.
Pressed into you, like an impression.
Exactly. It is the admission that the shape of your perspective has been permanently altered by their performance.
Like an impression left in wet concrete. You are telling the speaker, I am different now because of what you just did.
Yeah.
That is incredibly powerful. You aren't just grading their homework anymore. You are acknowledging their influence over your own mind.
Which is why impressive is often the most validating compliment a mentor can give a mentee. It signals a complete shift in the power dynamic.
Oh, how so?
It says, you are no longer just producing work for me to evaluate. You are producing work that moves me.
Wow. Okay, we have one final axis to cover from the teacher's board. The axis of performative dominance. She writes the word outstanding, defining it as a truly superior performance.
This is where we look at the physical and energetic reality of execution. To be outstanding is to possess a dominant presence that overshadows the environment.
It makes me think of like a neon sign in a dimly lit, dusty room. You can't not look at it. It's not just that the glass of the sign is well crafted, which would be the excellent axis,
Right.
or that it's brighter than the other signs, the exceptional axis.
Right.
It's that the raw emission of energy completely commands the visual space. It stands out.
That is a perfect visualization of the mechanism at play. Outstanding is praise for the performer, not just the performance.
Oh, that's a key distinction.
It really is. It validates the sheer force of will required to hold a room captive. It says that in a crowded field of variables, the individual's execution was the undisputed focal point.
When you lay it all out like this, it makes you realize what an absolute tragedy it is to just say, good. We've just walked through 5 completely different architectural structures for evaluating human effort: craftsmanship, statistical outliers, social virality, emotional impact, performative dominance.
Oh, very different.
And before the teacher intervened, all of those complex realities were just getting shoved into one tiny, inadequate box.
Yeah, the teacher didn't just give them a vocabulary list, she gave them a diagnostic toolkit. She forced the class to stop acting as passive consumers and become active analysts. By providing the terminology, she quite literally expanded their capacity to perceive reality.
And the real-world application of this is where the story actually pays off. The narrative in our text jumps forward in time. Emily absorbs this lesson. The teacher has advocated for her right to receive accurate praise, and the whole ecosystem of the classroom has changed.
You can feel the shift.
You really can. The next time someone praises Emily's work, they don't hand her the metaphorical gift card. They don't call it good. They call it outstanding.
And right there, we see the immediate collapse of the default trap. And the resolution of the story highlights 2 distinct, highly consequential benefits of abandoning basic vocabulary.
Okay, let's hear them.
Well, the first is an internal shift for the recipient.
The meaning multiplier.
Yeah.
The fact that this one specific word made the compliment feel exponentially more significant to Emily.
Exactly. It goes back to our earlier discussion about active observation. When Emily hears the word outstanding, she recognizes that her peer had to utilize System 2 thinking.
They had to actually engage.
Right. They had to actively watch her, process her performative dominance, and select a load-bearing word to describe it. That friction, that cognitive effort expended by the speaker, is what honors Emily's labor.
She actually feels perceived. It's like, okay, it's the difference between watching a movie on a standard definition television from, say, 2004 and watching it on a modern 4K OLED screen.
I like this analogy.
Thanks. I mean, the underlying movie is exactly the same, right?
Yeah.
Emily's presentation didn't change retroactively, but when the classroom was operating on standard definition vocabulary, all the depth, the texture, the subtle nuances of her work were entirely blurred out. The teacher upgraded their resolution.
That's spot on. The reality of the performance was finally rendered accurately. The 4K vocabulary allowed the audience to articulate the texture of what they were experiencing. And that articulation is what makes the praise feel deeply validating, rather than just merely polite.
But it doesn't just benefit Emily, and this is crucial. There is a massive external benefit for the speaker, which is the final point this deep dive drives home.
Oh, absolutely.
The rule presented is simple. Choose richer words, and your English sounds truly advanced. But let's look at the psychology of why it sounds advanced, because it's not just about passing a grammar exam.
No, it is fundamentally about authority and personal branding. The vocabulary you deploy acts as an immediate signaling mechanism to everyone in the room about your level of competence.
Signaling competence.
Yes. When the classmate initially said it was good, he signaled that he was a passive, low-resolution thinker. He signaled that his analytical engine was turned off.
He sounded like a bystander in his own life.
Precisely. But when a professional deploys precise C2-level vocabulary, when they can articulate exactly why a strategy is exceptional rather than just good, they instantly project leadership.
They do.
They signal that they possess the cognitive bandwidth to not only observe the environment, but to accurately diagnose it.
It establishes dominance in the best way possible. If you are in a meeting and you say, the way you structure this data is highly impressive, it really shifts our perspective on Q3, you don't just make the presenter feel great.
No, you're doing much more than that.
You announce to the entire room that your opinion holds weight. You establish yourself as a discerning mind. You become the person whose feedback actually matters because you have the specialized tools to evaluate reality accurately.
You transition from someone who just reacts to the world to someone who actively defines it.
Which completely reframes the stakes of this entire conversation for me. This isn't just a story about a high school English class learning synonyms.
Not at all.
It's a blueprint for how to navigate power dynamics, honor human effort, and elevate your own authority in literally any room you walk into. We started this deep dive looking at the trap of linguistic laziness, that cognitive miserliness that makes us hand out good like cheap candy.
Right. And we examined the severe limitations of that default setting and how it actively blunts our perception.
We looked at the teacher's intervention, establishing language as a load-bearing structure. And we broke down the psychology behind those 5 axes of excellence: craftsmanship, statistics, social impact, emotional footprints, and performative energy.
And we saw how upgrading that resolution transforms a hollow social obligation into a moment of genuine human connection and, established authority.
No more building skyscrapers with plastic hammers.
Yeah.
But as we wrap this up, I want to hand it over to you for one final thought. Because if this applies to praise, it has to apply to the other side of the coin, right?
It does. It is the natural and perhaps even more vital conclusion to draw here. We have just spent this time analyzing how upgrading basic words completely transforms the psychological weight of a compliment. We've seen how precision honors the effort of the person succeeding.
Right.
But consider the inverse. How might applying this exact same level of linguistic precision change the way you offer constructive criticism?
Oh, man. That is a terrifying and brilliant question.
If good is fundamentally broken because it's too blunt, too lazy, and too generic to validate success, then words like bad, wrong, or poor are equally catastrophic when you are trying to help someone improve.
Because they don't actually tell you what's wrong.
Exactly. If you tell an employee their work is bad, you are deploying a blunt instrument that crushes morale without offering a single diagnostic insight.
It's just a wrecking ball.
Yes. If we can no longer accept good as a standard for praise,
Right.
then we must absolutely eradicate basic vocabulary from our feedback entirely. If you want to fix a problem, you need the right tool.
You cannot perform surgery with a sledgehammer. The right tool for the exact job. Thank you so much for completely rewiring how I'm going to speak in my next meeting. And thank you, the listener, for joining us on this deep dive. Go out there, upgrade your resolution, and we will catch you next time.